Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump wants to be a king. It's the best explanation for everything he's been doing just in recent days. Just look at what he's doing right now to the White House. That is, of course, the people's house. It's our house as Americans, as citizens. There it is. The residence of every president since John Adams in 1800. And that is more destruction the White House has seen since the troops for the British crown burned it down in the War of 1812. Trump wants the White House to be a kingly palace, and so he is doing his own renovation. He's ripping up the East Wing to build a grand gilded ballroom unilaterally. No one in Congress was asked to appropriate funds for this. In fact, when I saw the plans announced, I assumed they'd smuggled it into the one big beautiful bill because, of course, they could have done that. They could have gotten congressional authorization. But no one even got a say.
We are going to make and build a ballroom, which they've wanted for probably 100 years at the White House, and it'll be a world-class, beautiful ballroom.
For 150 years, presidents, administrations, and White House staff have longed for a large event space on the White House complex that can hold substantially more guests than currently allowed.
This is going to be one of the best anywhere in the world. There won't be anything like it, actually.
I mean, it was pretty big before. We seem to do okay as a country with it. Trump announced he was going to do that at the end of July. It was set to cost $200 million, which he said he would get from private donors, including Comcast, the current parent company of our network. Now, the cost has already swelled to $250 million. And by the way, no one talks about this when they report on this, but I just have to point out, there's a law in the books. It's from the 19th century. It's been updated multiple times. It's called the Anti-Deficiency Act, and it very expressly forbids spending money on government projects that have not been appropriated by Congress. Like, pretty black and white. So it's truly not clear this is at all legal. Trump also claimed that the new construction would not interfere with the existing structure. Well, he lied. Less than 3 months later, there are excavators tearing down the existing structure. And not just like cosmetic facades being removed. The entire eastern side of the White House is just gone, demolished. All, we should note, in the middle of a government shutdown, while more than 1 million civil servants go without pay. But presumably the person operating the backhoe is getting paid, because Trump can apparently hit up his donors to bankroll the demolition of the literal edifice of our democratic government. In this latest image from the Washington Post, you can see the entire eastern side of the White House is just gone. Most of the East Wing. Why? Because that's what he wants to do.
You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money.
Yeah, it reminds you of money, right? Who is paying for it, after all? Are we sure all that money is going to be tracked carefully? This is, of course, how a monarch acts, right? And this is just one small but very illustrative example that absolutely pales next to Trump's most kingly urges, like, for instance, and this is not hyperbolic, the urge to kill anyone he wants, anywhere, anytime.
President Trump also shared video of the strike on the submarine that he says was carrying a large amount of fentanyl. He said the attack killed 2 people on board the vessel, while 2 others survived. This was at least the 5th strike the Trump administration has carried out in international waters against alleged drug traffickers. Critics have argued the strikes are illegal and circumvent due process laws, but President Trump has vowed to continue them.
Those killings are illegal. I mean, absent some new information, absent some new legal rationale, based on everything we do know, they're illegal. But again, don't take it from me, take it from this conservative Republican senator.
Do you believe that these strikes against these suspected drug boats are legal?
No, they go against all of our tradition. You know, when you kill someone, you should know if you're not at war, not in a declared war, you really need to know someone's name, at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all of these people have been blown up without us knowing their name, without any evidence of a crime.
Yeah, that's extrajudicial killing. Now, there's lots of new developments in this story. We're going to be discussing them later in the show with Senator Mark Kelly. One of the big developments in that story is that the president of Colombia is now accusing Trump of murdering a fisherman from his country in one of those strikes last month. And Trump's response was saying he would cut aid and impose new tariffs on Colombian imports. punishing critics of his extrajudicial killings with a new kingly tariff, not authorized by Congress, just because he wants to slap it on. Then, of course, there's Trump's use of his pardon power. Now, that's one of the presidential powers in the U.S. Constitution that is quite literally derived from the king's privileges. And actually, there was a really fascinating debate at the time of the founding about it, with many founding fathers worried it might be abused by a corrupt, tyrannical president. This week, Trump used that vast power in the middle of his term to commute the sentence of convicted fraudster and former Republican Congressman George Santos. Trump loves his ability to pardon people because it is the closest thing in the American Constitution to a kingly power. And he's always reminding people he can exercise that privilege without restraint, even for, say, convicted child sex traffickers.
Ghislaine Maxwell serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking. Is clemency on the table for her in exchange for testimony?
I'm allowed to do it, but nobody's asked me to do it. I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about the case, but I know I have the right to do it. I have the right to give pardons.
Now, we all saw how Trump unilaterally pardoned every January 6th insurrectionist, even the ones who assaulted cops, who beat their brains in, right? Even though people close to Trump, including Vice President J.D. Vance, said, of course, there should be no clemency for violent insurrectionists, just like a day or two before he granted that exact clemency. Get this. Today, we learned that one of those January 6 rioters that Trump pardoned, seen here rifling through Senator Ted Cruz's desk, has been arrested for threatening to assassinate Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic House Minority Leader. And Trump is still demanding restitution for one of those people who were charged for their role in January 6th, himself. You're really not going to believe this one, and you haven't encountered it yet today, but I'll read from the New York Times. Here we go. President Trump is demanding that the Justice Department pay him about $230 million in compensation for the federal investigations into him, according to people familiar with the matter, who added that any settlement might ultimately be approved by senior department officials who defended him or those in his orbit. The situation has no parallel in American history, as Trump, a presidential candidate, was pursued by federal law enforcement and eventually won election, taking over the very government that must now review his claims. Trump was charged with 4 felonies in connection with his attempt to overthrow the government. He used his vast wealth to keep the courts busy, to draw proceedings out so he never faced justice, and then his hand-picked and appointed justices delivered him immunity, and it worked. He walked free, he got elected, and now he wants to be repaid out of the U.S. Treasury, out of our collective money for that. You cannot put a price on vanity, unless, of course, you are King Donald. And that is why 7 million people took to the streets last weekend in more than 2,500 communities with this very simple, straightforward message: no kings. There aren't many messages more fundamentally American than that one. It is at the bedrock of our founding, which is why MAGA tried so hard to paint this mass movement as anti-American and radical. Republicans are trying in vain to push this obviously absurd distortion because they desperately want people not to look at what Trump is doing day in, day out. Acting like a king, posting AI videos of himself as a king using a fighter jet to defecate on his subjects. There is no mystery to decipher here. No coded messages or dog whistles. You don't need some graduate degree in semiotics. Donald Trump wants to be the king of you and tell you what to do and control your life. And he's building his kingly court right now.
The emperor of illusions. If the first Trump presidency was chaos, the second is theater. Power isn't exercised, it's performed. His empire isn't built on laws or policies, but on moments, viral videos, dramatic headlines, and emotional clips that keep the crowd watching. He's turned the government into a stage where every briefing is a scene, every speech a script, every crisis a storyline. He knows that facts can be challenged, but feelings can't. That's why he speaks in emotion, not evidence. He doesn't convince, he performs. And in an era where attention is currency, performance is power. The problem is that illusions demand constant upkeep. When the crowd begins to doubt, the show must escalate. 1 week, it's an AI video. The next, it's a military threat, then a trade war. Spectacle replaces substance until even the presidency becomes an episode-to-episode survival act. Behind the smoke and lights, governance decays. Institutions grow weaker, staff rotate faster, and experts are sidelined for loyalists who clap on cue. Truth becomes something negotiated between belief and entertainment. You can't argue with followers who no longer care what's true, only what feels dramatic. Trump didn't invent this dynamic. He perfected it. He understood earlier than anyone that modern politics isn't about facts, it's about feeds. As long as his name trends, he wins. And the more outrageous the illusion, the stronger the connection with his base. They don't see manipulation. They see mythology. They see a man who fights back against invisible enemies on their behalf. But illusions have one fatal flaw. They collapse when reality bites back. Tariffs hurt businesses. Military threats scare investors. AI videos amuse the base, but embarrass the nation. Slowly, the line between show and shame blurs. The emperor may keep changing costumes, but the empire beneath him is wearing thin. In the end, history won't remember the spectacle's shine, but the silence it left behind. The hollow institutions, the eroded trust, the country that mistook applause for achievement. Trump may see himself as the star of the story, but someday the lights will go out, and the world will remember that even emperors can be naked.